In this video, I want to briefly go over how I was able to turn the $18 that I spent on buying this book not too long ago, and a few weeks after reading it, I was able to turn the $18 into $18,000 of profit by just doing these few simple principles, 3 specifically, that I learned from reading this book and applying it. And I think if you apply the same thing, you could probably even make more than $18,000 if I'm being fully honest with you. So what were the 3 main things that I learned that was able to help me make $18,000 in profit? So the first thing was that this book, The Outsiders by William Thorndike, it studies 8 CEOs and how they outperform the stock market and their peers by over 20x. And it tried to basically bring down the main key principles of how they did it. And so I thought about it to myself, even though I don't run a public company, how can I do that in my business today? And so the first key principle that I learned from that is, as the CEO, as a business owner, as the entrepreneur, your main job at its core is just to allocate capital. Okay, it's to basically put money into different buckets. And your money can go into 5 different places, right? So your business generates revenue, and when you redeploy it to reinvest it back in your business, it can go into 5 different places. The first place it can go to is you can reinvest into ops, into operations, okay? So what does that mean? Reinvesting into marketing. It means hiring people, expanding your existing operations, and just organically expanding your business. Okay, that's the first thing you can do, or at least you can reinvest your capital back into as a business owner. The second thing is you can acquire. Okay, so that's basically, in quotes here, that's M&A essentially. So you can buy businesses, you can buy competitors, you can buy different divisions, etc. That's the second thing you can do. The third thing you can do is you can pay down your debt. Okay, so if you have a business credit card, line of credit, anything existing that's charging interest against you that you're borrowing for, you can pay that down. Number 4 is you can pay dividends. And all that means is if you run a private company, it's just basically taking cash out of your business to pay yourself and to pay your team. And the last thing that you can do is you can buy back shares. Okay, this is according to the book. And these are the 5 different things as a public company CEO that you can do. Now, if you run a private business or a small business, an agency, a landscaping business, whatever you run, what this would mean, buy back shares, is can you buy back more equity from your business partner, from your investors, whoever gave you a capital? And these are all the ways that you can basically redeploy or reinvest money back into the business. And so with that knowledge, how exactly did I make $18,000? Well, I bought a small vending route. And so the vending route that I bought was for, where should I write this? Up here, for $50K. Out of that $50K, $25K in revenue came from the vending side, so vending machines, right? The other $25K came from a micro market. A micro market is just a self-checkout kiosk or a self-checkout location, like a mini retail convenience store inside of a company's workplace. So that was how it was broken up. Now, this section of it was broken up into 7 different locations. And the top 2 locations were basically bringing around 80% of the revenue. And the other 5 were bringing the bottom 20%. Right? And then this one was bringing 50%. So this one right here is bringing 50% of the revenue. This is bringing the other 50%. And then between this 50%, I have my vending locations doing 80% and the other 5 doing 20%. So with this logic, what was my strategy? How did I apply it? Well, the first thing that I did is I looked through the business and I looked at the 90 days and saw where all the money came from. So I did a small analysis, and that's what I found, which I encourage you to do it if you run your own business, right? See, what are the biggest clients? What are the most profitable jobs? What are the things in your business that you're doing that's actually driving 80% of the actual profit, right? I was speaking to a business owner who runs an appliance repair company near me, and he said that they had warranties and they also had cash on delivery type jobs. And they noted that warranties, although they took up 80% of their calendar, cash on delivery was the 20%, but it was bringing 80% of the actual money they made, right? And so using that logic, it helps you double down and understand where to reinvest your capital, right? So you can get higher rates of return. So in conclusion, for the first point, these are the 5 things you can do as a business owner to reinvest money back into your business. And so what I encourage you to do is look at the last 90 days of where revenue came in from your business. What were the types of clients? What were the most profitable jobs, the most profitable locations, the most profitable marketing channels, whatever it is for you, and find the 80-20, okay? So find where is 80% of the profit actually coming from, okay? And you want to double down on that. Essentially what I did, that was my logic. Because in these videos, I'm just sharing what I learned, lessons that I experienced myself personally, so hopefully you can shortcut your way and learn as well. So I saw that this location, or these types of locations, were printing for us. Whereas the vending side, not so much. So if I have to reinvest, I'm going to reinvest into acquiring more locations like the micro market. At least that's my logic, right? So now at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm thinking of buying this business, and I see that one account is bringing half of the revenue, which is a little risky, for sure. Actually, no, very, very risky. And now I'm like, what can I do to reinvest my money to see if I can acquire more accounts like that, like the micro market, right? And it brings me on to the second point, which is the biggest takeaway I had from the book, which is a hurdle rate. So out of the 8 CEOs, most of them had a specific minimum threshold of a return that you want to get with your capital. And so for each industry, it's a little bit different, but the whole premise is if you can reinvest into just treasuries and get a flat 5% with no risk almost, then might as well get that. If you're taking a gamble, you might as well be getting 3 to 4 or 5 times that amount, right? You want to be getting a 15, 20, 25% return on your money, especially when you're starting your business. But oftentimes when you're starting off as a smaller business owner, you can oftentimes get a 300, 400% return. And so for me in my business, my logic was, where am I getting the highest rates of return in my business? And I saw that was in the micro market. So basically, you want to set a hurdle rate for yourself on, hey, I know I can get a minimum of this amount of return in my business, and you work backwards from there. And if it doesn't meet that hurdle rate, then you either, for example, if you have debt outstanding where you have 30% in yearly in APR and credit card interest, it makes more sense to pay that down, right? And they notice that everyone in this book never paid out dividends. They always just used that money to buy back shares, right? Which basically grew the ownership of all the equity holders, so Berkshire Hathaway did, etc. So now with this logic, okay, what do I do? I looked at the whole business and I said, well, I bought this side. I actually ended up buying the business, the vending side, for $20K, and then I paid $30K for the micro market. That's how it was basically split up. And so now I thought to myself, okay, what can I do to reinvest money to acquiring more locations like that one? So if I were to cut everything else out and only focus on this, odds are I would 10x the amount or the growth of the business. And so using that logic, I then went and spent probably around $500, okay, on Google Ads. And we ended up signing Toyota as a client, which you can see in the video prior, for a 2-year agreement, which is going to pay us over 6 figures. So what I did was I essentially took the vending side and I said, hey, this is taking 80% of our time. We only paid 20 grand for it, and it's only bringing in 20% of the money. What happens if we sell it and we reinvest money into the Google Ads that got us clients like Toyota, like a micro market, and all that good stuff? So then what we did was we listed the vending side of the business for sale immediately after buying it, okay? So imagine you buy this business and in 2-3 days, you turn around, contact the broker, and now you're selling off the part that you don't want, right? And we ended up selling it for $38,000 in cash, okay? In cash, and we bought this business, the whole entire thing on seller financing was 0 interest. So now we were able to take a big profit on just the vending side. Now we're flush with like $18,000 in cash. Granted, it's not a lot for some of you, but for a young guy that just graduated college like me, who's starting from nothing, it was a good amount, which now we can reinvest into growing the business and getting higher ticket accounts. This was a game changer for me because I looked at the business and I said, okay, each vending machine for us is worth like 3-4 grand, and they're bringing in, like, the bottom 5 here are bringing in 20%. I mean, they're bringing like $100, right? So it's $100 per month they're bringing in, around half that's profit, $50. So it's bringing $50 a month, or in other words, $600 per year on a $4,000 machine. What's the return on that? And did it meet my hurdle rate? The answer was no. It was barely over a 10% return. So if I could get that in a different place, then I would much rather invest money there. And so that's why that hurdle rate is very useful. But the third thing that I'm going to mention right now is probably arguably the most important, which is understanding your North Star metric. So there's one metric usually in your business that you should always strive for. For us, okay, in different businesses like a gym business or a software business, it's LTV to CAC, right? It's lifetime value compared to your cost to acquire a customer. For us, it's not that. For us, our metric is lifetime value. I like to use lifetime gross profit, which is how much a customer pays you over the duration of them doing business with you compared to location acquisition cost, which includes our equipment, how much we're investing in equipment to get a location up and running, plus the cost to acquire the customer, right? So location acquisition cost. We're technically not a service-based business. So if we're investing $10,000 in equipment and each lead or each client costs us $2,000 to sign, we know that each location is going to cost us, or a lakh here, is $12,000. And our lifetime gross profit, let's say our average client stays with us for like 3 to 4 years, and we end up making $3,000 to $4,000 a month at 50% margins, then 3,000, so 36, 50% margins, divided by 2, we are at 18 times whatever 3, and you start seeing that we start getting to like a 3 or sometimes even a 4 to 1 lifetime gross profit to location acquisition cost. And that's how it really starts to scale. Because the faster you can compound this and the faster you understand these metrics for yourself, you can actually start to then build a machine. And so with this logic in mind, we realized that for us in our business, our North Star metric was something called ROIC, which is return on invested capital. So how fast am I recovering the capital and the equipment and the cost when I actually invest into a location, right? So the faster, the better. Because profit, we can be making $1,000 in profit per month, but if it costs $100,000 in equipment, it's basically like, bro, you're not making any money. You're not going to break even at all. So in summary, the biggest things I got from this book is as a CEO or as a business owner, you have 5 places to put your money. Choose very, very wisely. Choose what can give you the highest rates of return. If you can buy back shares because everyone thinks your business is going to go down and you can buy your business and partner out, do that. Ideally, pay dividends or pay yourself out as little as possible. Pay back as much debt if it's high interest debt. Acquire other businesses if it makes sense. And then the hurdle rate is find what's your rate on return on your different projects, on your different businesses, on your different locations. Once you have that hurdle rate in mind, set that as a benchmark, because then you know where to take risk. If it's going to make sense, because you have a guaranteed bet, but you don't have a guaranteed like payoff, right? You're guaranteed to possibly invest money, but you don't know how much you're going to make. So make sure it's actually a projected high enough rate of return for you to get the biggest bang on your buck. And then 3 is the number 1 metric. Every single business owner has a number 1 metric. I know a second one for me is profit per location. What we track, we're seeing what locations are the most profitable and why. And so once you get down to the nitty gritty of like what job is most profitable, what locations are most profitable, why certain customers are more profitable than others, which ones churn less, then you can really work it backwards, cut everything else off, double down on just that side of things, and you can make money. And so with this, I was able to basically spend $18 and I bought the business, sold off the worst 50% of the business, and I doubled my money essentially on that part, and I made $38,000 in cash, or in other words, $18,000 in profit in just the span of a few weeks after reading this book, which is actually why it's very important to read, in my opinion, because you start getting so much pattern recognition. I was actually one of the slowest readers in my class. I had to go to a reading class when I was in first grade because I didn't read very well. But now I see how valuable it is because you start gaining so much data in a way. Like you start understanding how things work and you start getting so many patterns in your head. And that helps you then make a more accurate judgment on a business decision. So I know this is more high level. I really enjoyed the book personally because it showed me more that as a business owner, you're an investor at its core. And Warren Buffett says that, like being a business owner has made him a better investor, or it kind of goes something like that. And so as a business owner, you are investing money into different things, either into marketing, into people, into hiring, into equipment, and understanding where to best allocate that and looking at everything on a return on capital or a profit per location, profit per job is very, very helpful, and it completely changed me and my thought process on how I see everything. So hope that was helpful. I know it might have been a little bit over the place. I didn't really script this video, but hope someone got some value from that. And we're learning. We're learning a lot of lessons as we keep on going and as we keep on scaling, and we'll go from there.